2 Corinthians chapter 4. I love you so much. All right. Verse 1. Therefore, this is such a beautiful passage. Therefore, since through God's mercy, we have this ministry. This is Paul writing to the church in Corinth, and just pretend tonight for a moment he's writing directly to you. Just get the context of that. Therefore, since through God's mercy, we get to minister. We get to do this. So we do not lose heart. Look at your neighbor and say, do not lose heart. Like we're going to preach tonight. Rather, we have renounced, watch this, secret and shameful ways. We do not use deception at VOO Church, nor do we distort the word of God. On the contrary, in fact, completely opposite, by setting forth the truth plainly, we commend ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of God. And even, watch this, if our gospel is veiled, it's veiled to those who are perishing. Meaning people are going to look and go, I don't get it. They don't get it because they haven't encountered salvation in Christ yet. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel, the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your, watch this, servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. But we have this, not from us, but we have this treasure of jars of clay to show us that his all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. Verse 8, my favorite. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not destroyed, but not in despair, persecuted. I can't read because my Bible's so small. Glasses. Someone's going to pray for me. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body. Watch this. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. Golly, I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that for ministers of the gospel, for leaders in God's house. And I want to take a few moments. Not going to preach long, but I got a word on my heart. And I just shared a version of it to our staff last week at our staff retreat. I'll tell you what, our staff, I think, is in the healthiest place it's ever been. They came back ready to storm hell with a water gun. So they're fired up. And I want to talk tonight from the subject, the struggle has its purpose. The struggle has its purpose. And it's a word for some people in the room. And I think one of the things I've been fascinated about as I was taking a break this summer is just studying history in general and realizing how much easier you and I have it compared to our ancestors. Like, is that okay to say? Like, life, contrary to what you've watched on the news and what you might be watching and hearing from TikTok, life has never been better. I mean, the life expectancy has increased 50 years over the last 1,000 years. Every one of us who live in the West, even if we're living in a place of poverty, most of us aren't hunting for our food, looking for fire, trying to find shelter. We are extremely, extremely blessed. Children who pass away, we've come up with so many vaccines that all of this continues to get better. We've never been more educated. Poverty has never been as low as it is today. Life, in so many ways, compared to how my grandparents lived on this planet, is easier, it's better, it's more comfortable, it's more convenient. Yet, it's fascinating as we look at the data today to see how many people, although life is easier and better, are struggling like never before. Suicide, mental health, anxiety, depression, families that can't stay together, people questioning their identity, people looking for purpose, people unhappy everywhere that they go. And I suppose I wonder if I can just lay a foundation a little bit, is I wonder if in all of our blessing and if all of our comfort, if we have forgotten the one thing that constantly has been bringing meaning to humanity from the start, which is this word struggle. Struggle has always been in the face of human beings, that we have an adversity, we have something to fight for, there's something to contend with. I'm not a big fan of Nietzsche, but he did say something I think is quite beautiful. He says, what makes us heroic? Confronting simultaneously our supreme suffering and our supreme hope. What's he saying? He's saying, I'm willing to face it. I'm not running away. I'm not backing down. I'm not getting out. I'm staying with it. I just wonder tonight, I wonder if some of us in this place, I wonder if we're wasting our struggles. I wonder if we have the wrong perspective about struggle. I wonder if your entire prayer life is all about not struggling. I wonder if you're just complaining about your struggles. I wonder if you're just venting about your struggles. I wonder if you're just taking all your time at Crew just talking about your struggles. Don't get me wrong, we need outlets, but what if I told you tonight that some struggles are to be embraced because the struggle has its purpose? When I go through my life, every good thing in my life I had to struggle for. I'm talking about everything had a struggle, had some sort of adversity, had some level of opposition that I had to face and not back down. I think about just getting here tonight and being in this auditorium. This is not a 7-year journey. This is a 30-year journey. This is a journey of us leaving Tacoma, Washington in 1998, moving to Miami, Florida. It was a struggle for my family, but I'm grateful that we discovered there was a purpose on the inside of a struggle. Who knew there was going to be a life-giving church in the heart of Miami that wasn't just going to touch the local city, but it was going to truly touch the world. The struggle has its purpose. I think about meeting my wife, Dawn Cherie, dating long distance, going to Bible college, trying to stay together, fighting through it. The struggle has its purpose. I think about all those years wanting babies, wanting kids, but not giving up, continuing to bring it before God, getting a revelation that God is the one who brings contentment. Babies can never do that, but I'm grateful I didn't give up in the struggle, because through the struggle I discovered there was a purpose. Some of us in this room tonight, you are struggling. And you've walked in, and in your struggling, you are thinking about giving up. We could talk through a lot of areas. Maybe your marriage is struggling right now. And you came tonight, and you're like, I'm just going through the motions, but it's struggling, and you think the answer is, let me just quit. Maybe you're struggling at your job, and you think, let me just quit, and then life will be much easier. You do realize in the next job, you're going to have to face struggles. We start lying to ourselves, and we start making believe that somehow this friend offended me, and so let me go find a new friend, and this thing had pain, and let me run away from the pain. And I suppose tonight I want to challenge us as a church that the struggle has its purpose. I could teach lots of areas around the struggle. Some of the things I'm just thinking about tonight is that struggle brings appreciation. Whew. I was in Montana a couple weeks ago, and we drove up to the top of Glacier. It's one of the big national parks in America. It was beautiful. As we got to the top, we drove up there. I looked around with my family. I said, this is gorgeous. I mean, we are so high up in the air looking around. Couldn't believe the beauty I was looking at. What was amazing was that same morning, I was with my friend, Pastor Levi Lusko, and he likes to hike. I live in the city. I like to watch Netflix, and he said, hey, Rich, tomorrow I'm going to pick you up at 5:30 in the morning before you go to Glacier, and I'm going to take you on a hike. And I'm a competitive dude, so I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go, because that's what I want to do, is wake up at 5:30 on my vacation. This dude picked me up, and this man's full on, had the backpack with the water, I'm like, what are we fitting to do right now, And this dude took me to the ski slopes, but there was no snow. I said, we taking the chairlift up? He said, no, we're going to hike up that thing. Yeah, within 3 minutes, I was looking for an inhaler. I don't even have one. I was just looking at, do you have an inhaler? It was 1 mile straight up. I don't know how I got there. All I know is when I got to the top of that mountain and I looked around, how many of y'all know I appreciated a little bit different? I wasn't as high as Glacier, but somebody drove me up to Glacier. This other little ski hill, I hiked up that thing, and that fight, it was a worthy fight, and I conquered that ski slope only to say, I appreciate this. Come on, somebody in this place, you're gonna have a new sense of gratitude if you don't give up. It's a new satisfaction, a new fulfillment. Struggle brings appreciation, but it also builds character. And I need our church to hear this. If you hear anything tonight, this is what we believe about church, because we're telling you about great things that we're accomplishing and doing. But I am telling you, God always cares more about who you become than what you accomplish. Who you become is your character. What you do is your contribution. But you do realize you don't get to take any of your accomplishments to eternity. You're going into eternity. Therefore, God will use struggles to build character on the inside of you, because he's saying, when you finally do get to the top, I don't want you just to get there without any character. I want you to get there in a healthy form that you can show others the path. And there's something about struggles that build, I think character is the strength that you have to carry God's blessing. And I want our church to mature as we step into our 7th year, recognizing that God has blessed this church immensely. God has done amazing things. There are people who've gone for 7 years that haven't seen 100 salvations. We just celebrated 16,000 salvations. I wish somebody would applaud like they knew they were a part of something much bigger than themselves. 16,000 people surrender their life to Jesus. But what I'm learning is that if we want God to continue to bless us, blessing is heavy. Some of y'all have never even considered the weight of a blessing, the weight of responsibility, the weight of a God dream, the weight of God opportunity. There is no way my wife and I can do all this by ourselves. We have to have an amazing team. We have to have healthy team leaders. We have to have healthy crew leaders. If we're gonna reach this city, if we're gonna make a dent in the darkness in this city, we're gonna need some men and women who can carry the blessing of God. And it doesn't come from talent. It doesn't come from skill. It comes from a heart that has walked through fire, who's gotten on the other side and said, I didn't give up in the fight. I didn't quit when it got hard. I stayed in the struggle. Someone say the struggle has its purpose. That thing is purifying you. That thing is refining you. It brings appreciation. It builds character. But I'm telling you what, it burns away counterfeits. Some of y'all have got to learn this in your life, because you keep going to false idols. You keep going to quick fixes. Instead of getting joy, you resort to pleasure. Sin is pleasurable for a season. But I'm telling you what, friends, we have to mature in this house. And when you stay in the struggle, when you stay in the fight, when you recognize this thing is hard, this thing is difficult, but it's got my full focus, it's got my full attention, I'm not backing down, it starts burning away all those other things that you used to run to. I don't want a counterfeit, I want the real thing. I don't want supplements. I want the source. His name is Jesus Christ. He's a faithful God. He's going to get you through this thing. I was on this little break, and I was traveling through Chicago on my way to Montana. We were away for a few weeks, and to be honest with you, most Sundays of the year, I'm always in church, whether I'm preaching or not. But being on break, we had this one travel day where we were traveling through Chicago, and I actually had meant to go to church that day, but we had a hiccup. I kind of start to see it from a new vantage point. I'm like, oh, there's hiccups, things happen. And I couldn't get to church that Sunday in Chicago. And it was so funny because, like, as a pastor, I'm here all day on Sunday. Like, you guys know of a world I know nothing about. I was in Chicago. I'm like, oh, this is where everyone is. Okay. And to be honest with you, I was like, brunch is fun. I get it. Okay, I get it. We have some competition, like there's things to do other than go to church, And so one of the things we did on a Sunday, don't tell no one, this is rare for me, but we took our family on a tour of on the Chicago River of an architecture tour. And if you know anything about Chicago, Chicago is famous for its architecture. And so, I was like on this boat with my kids, and our friend Valet was with us, and my wife was with us, and we were going. And this tour guide, she has like a master's degree in like art, I don't know, but she was passionate, dude. Like, she was saying stuff, and I started taking notes. I was like, this is good. Shout out to all the growth track facilitators out there, yo. Like, you have no idea whose life you can change anytime a mic gets put in your hand. So this woman's like talking, like, I'm like, man, this is good. And she was saying stuff. Well, I'll spare you this stuff. But we got to the end of the river, and she said, this is the place where the Chicago fire began. And she pointed over across the river. She said it started right there. She said what happened was in 1871, this fire started over here. And the river was so polluted that it jumped into the river and everything caught on fire. And with it, it then jumped onto the other side of the river, and if you could believe it, it hit a paper mill. Like the last thing you want to have hit it. With it, the Chicago fire was set into motion, a 3-mile block completely burned to the ground, some 18,000 buildings destroyed, 300 people lost their life. To this day, it's the largest urban fire known in history. What's amazing when you study the Chicago fire is that what appeared to be the worst thing ever, anyone who's from Chicago or has any bit of its history would tell you it was the best thing that ever happened in that city. Because it leveled everything and it gave them a chance to build again. And before you know it, Chicago starts getting built. It starts getting formed. People move from all over the world to help Chicago get started. Chicago, to this day, some 100 years later, is known as one of the best designed cities in all of the world. It has a 3-layer street, yo. But the thing that fascinated me the most was what she told me was the fire happened in 1871. 15 years later, the skyscraper was invented. Take a guess where the skyscraper was invented at. Chicago. 15 years later, the first skyscraper is invented and built in Chicago. Rich, what are you saying? I'm saying the struggle has its purpose. And can I just prophesy to our church for a moment about something I firmly believe? There were a lot of counterfeits that burned up in COVID. There were a lot of counterfeits that burned up in 2021. And I don't know when it's going to happen. But I'm putting both my feet down tonight and saying, if it takes 15 more years, I believe on the other side of this crisis, we're about to see some skyscrapers formed for the cause of Jesus Christ. I'm not going anywhere. The struggle has its purpose. I'm planting my feet, believing we're going to see amazing things take place, not only in my generation, but in your kids' generation, in your kids' generation. Anybody in the building tonight have some faith that the struggle has its purpose? It's got a purpose, man. After the fire comes through, skyscrapers are coming. I don't know when, but we're going to see it with our eyes. We got worthy work in front of us. We have a fight that is worth fighting. Don't give up. Don't quit. We need you in God's house. The kingdom of God, it moves forward with men and women of sacrifice. Here the Apostle Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he is speaking to them, and he's talking about the struggles that they are facing, and he makes it very, very clear. He says, we're not trying to veil anything. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to manipulate. We're not trying to scheme people. We're just telling it to you plainly how it is, and we're believing that although we are dying and struggling on the outside, every time we give this ministry to others, life is being formed on the inside. Felt like saying it this way tonight. If you're not struggling, it's because you're dying. Everyone's struggling. I'm struggling tonight. But we don't give up in the struggle. We don't diminish it or throw it away. We find community and we lean in together and we tell ourselves the struggle has its purpose. The struggle has its purpose. See, what I'm very, very well aware of, and I speak to our staff tonight, I speak to our team leaders, our lay pastors, of course, our servant leaders, is that you are called. Someone say, I am called. Now I'm going to preach to you like you're some leaders in the room. You are called. You're called. But what many people don't realize is that your calling has competition. Many of us in this room, we don't recognize it, that the Lord has a beautiful plan, wants to use you in a glorious way, but there is constantly going to be competition. It's not just brunch in Chicago. It's Jonah who's called to a city, but there's a boat headed in the other direction somehow at the right moment. Let me just say it to you this way. It's not because I'm prophesying now, and I'm preaching tonight, and this is a call. You're going to walk out of this room. Some of you are going to shout and say, I'm on board. I'm doing this thing. And you're going to walk out, and there's going to be a boat headed in the opposite direction. And part of tonight is solidifying, what do you believe? Maybe one of the best things I could teach you tonight from a leadership standpoint is you walk out of this room tonight, and you determine what you believe and write that stuff down. Who is Jesus to you? Write it down. What is God's house to you? Write it down. And then decide, I'm not going to go and spend all my time looking at things and listening to things that say the opposite to what I believe. How's that going to go? Some of you are called to full-time ministry, but you go back to a home every night where people mock you and make fun of you. At some point, you're going to have to figure out how to put a boundary up. Yo, I love you, but I got to love you from a distance. Because my calling has competition. And our church has competition. It's not another church. It's not a man. It's not a woman. Our church has a competition. It is called the gates of hell. It is called demons and darkness and principalities. But we have to stand in the gap and say, we're not going to back down. We're going to do everything we possibly can to serve the gospel to the people of Miami. Someone say, I'm called. I think we should clarify a few things. Calling always, just so we understand, calling is about who before it's about do. Some of us, we get real tripped up. We're like, oh my goodness, what's my title? What's my title? What's my title? What's my career? What's my career? No. Calling is always about who you are before what you do. So I'm called to love Jesus. I'm called to love my wife. I'm called to father my 3 children. Listen to me. I love being a pastor. It's my job. Thank you for being the best church ever. Thank you for being so generous and gracious. I hear some stories for pastors like, oh, I don't know what that story, I can't do that story. I just have the greatest people in the world I get to work with. So honestly, I mean that. Best church in the world. I love my job. But you ought to know I love my family more. First. Why? Because this is my career and part of my calling, but my first calling. So watch this, just so we understand. I love being a pastor. But how many of y'all know I am failing at my calling if I get up and preach really good messages and you're like crying, like that's dynamic, and I got a word. I don't know what that voice is. Oh my goodness. But I neglect my wife. I don't spend time with my kids. Let me tell you what I firmly believe. I believe if that's the reality of my life, God would be more blessed and more glorified for me to go and be a plumber for him and take care of my calling than being a pastor for him. You feel me? It's important. It's who before do. Always. Always. Number 2, write this down. Calling finds you. You don't have to find it. Some of you are so freaked out. Oh my gosh, is this the right church? Oh, is this the right team? 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 I did my spiritual gifts test and growth track. Now I'm really confused. Listen to me, if you'll focus on who, the calling will come and find you. It will come and find you. There is this whole teaching in the world today. It's like everything from within will lead. No. Sometimes calling starts on the outside. Sometimes you're summoned to a call. Sometimes you look at something going, I was never thinking about that, never wanted to do that, but man, I see this for what it is, and I can't stay silent. I have to speak up. I have to do something. And many of us in the room, you're real tripped up, and you go to, it's like your 4th church in the last 4 years, because every time you get there, like, I don't know if I'm called here. Well, dude, that's 4 years of getting nothing accomplished for the Lord. Like you're uprooting each time. Because the third thing about calling is that calling always requires commitment. And if you will commit, it will find you. It will find you. It's heart and soul, so let me just preach it. Bro, those who are planted in the house of the Lord will flourish. Doesn't say those who are transplanted. You transplant a plant too many times, it dies. Planting is about putting roots down. I didn't like the music. Well, you're planted, so chill out. It's gonna get better. Let's make it better. I just wish that, like, I don't know why, we're doing a collection on daddy issues. Well, there's gonna be another one after that. Just wish we would do more studies on angels. Like, bro, at some point you have to get planted and recognize that you're a part of a garden and you're putting your roots down, and it's not about your preference, it's about our purpose. Let's struggle together. We're gonna get through this thing. I'm called to it. Someone say, I'm called to it. I'm called to it. I'm called to it. I'm getting planted. It makes me laugh because sometimes people in church is like, I don't know, I'm just like not really feeling it right now. You ever think, I'm not always feeling it either? You kind of offended me last week. Yeah, you kind of offended me too. Let's work it out. We're planted. Let's go on the journey. You know, this church could be better. I agree. It could be a lot better. I need you to make it better. You can't get this kind of preaching on a Sunday. All right. I'm committed. Someone say the struggle has its purpose. I'm wondering tonight, and I know it's a big, broad concept. I'm wondering tonight, what struggle are you avoiding? What struggle are you running from that might have purpose? Because it's going to bring appreciation. It's going to build character. It's burning away counterfeits. I think in struggles, you can either go to the counterfeits or you can go to Christ. I'm called to it, man. It's about who I am before it's about what I do. This thing's going to find me. This thing just keeps finding me. There's so many things we do in our church that just keeps finding us. But I got to stay committed. I got to stay planted. I'm going quick, and I told the worship not to come up, but I'm way over my clock, and so maybe come up in point 2, Greg, wherever you are, because otherwise I will just, everyone's making it way too much fun tonight to talk, and there's not another service bumping in. I want to give you some things that you're called and committed to, and this is for all of us. If you're a follower of Christ, before you make it about what's the strategy, listen, there's a few things that you are called that you have to be committed to. Number 1, write this down. I'm called and committed to being a disciple. Called and committed to being a disciple. This is so important on our journey together. We're 7 years in. I'm looking at people on this front row that now have multiple children. I'm looking at people that were single that are now married. Stories, that guy's really happy. It's growing, not just in metrics, it's growing in depth. It's growing in heart. And on that journey, we have to realize I'm called and committed to being a disciple. I'm following Jesus. I just pull all the curtains back. Like, I love our community. I love celebrating with you. I love the birthday parties. I love the honor circles. But please understand that none of that has any point if we're not following Jesus. Like, that's what we're rallying around. That's what... We're not giving TED Talks. We're giving the gospel. We're not just trying to make decisions. We're trying to make disciples. And so what is a disciple? It's an apprentice of Jesus. It's someone who follows Jesus, who looks like Jesus, who becomes like Jesus, who starts to do what Jesus did. We're in 21 days of prayer and fasting, and I'm so thankful to see how we kick this thing off. And I know it's a sacrifice to make it to one of the prayer meetings, but it's not legalism. We're saying, are you a disciple? Twice a year we're going to pray. Like, let's spend time with the Father. If Jesus had to spend time with the Father, I think you and I are going to have to spend time with the Father. I'm called and committed to being a disciple. Number 2, write this down. I'm called and committed to being a steward. So important that we see this. Steward. We're 7 years into this story. I have more vision, more excitement and more hope than I did 7 years ago. Come on. There are some things cooking up right now that it's just, I love it too, because it's like, well, how are you going to pay for that? We don't know. You're going to figure it out. We're going to present vision, and God's going to meet us with provision. There's plenty of vision. What we need is a church full of men and women who recognize I'm called and committed to being a steward. First command in the Bible, be fruitful and multiply. Faith doesn't maintain. Faith multiplies. We all have different skills. We all have different gifts in this room. Listen, we had different gifts, but we all got the same job. Multiply. Multiply. I'm not talking about just numbers. I'm talking about multiply. Multiply the joy. Multiply the engagement. Multiply the heart. It's not always a metric like you're thinking, like this is what we believe. I used to go back to that parable of the talents. It's like one gets 5, one gets 2. And when I stand before God, I don't know how many talents he gave me. I just want to make sure I return more than what he gave me. I do not want us to be a church that buries it. And I suppose what scares me as the leader tonight is we have done a whole lot with a little 7 years ago. And I'm not saying we have a whole lot today, but 7 years later, we have a whole lot more than we did. I wonder, are we going to sow it? Are we going to give it? Are we going to multiply it? Are we going to watch it flourish and grow right before our eyes? I want to raise my kids in revival, man. I want to raise my kids to love the house of God. They're never going to do it if they don't watch their dad go first. I'm called and committed to being a steward. Number 3, I'm called and committed to being a friend. I just think as the church grows and as the years go by, there is no pain like relationship pain. And I want to make sure that I'm playing my part. I'm called and I'm committed to being a friend. What that means is the scripture says, if you want a friend, you got to be a friend. So I have to go first. I have to be the friend that I desire, that I want. This whole thing, ministry, guess what it is? This is what Paul is talking about. He's saying we have this message and this truth, but then it's shared and exchanged to people. I was joking a minute ago, but thank God you came tonight, because the more people that are in this room, the more opportunities for friendship and for relationship and for community. And this night doesn't have any purpose if it's just me and my wife and a band. But the fact that you're here is opportunities for ministry to take place, that we can remind each other of the gospel, that with God's word we can minister to each other. And we have to be committed that we don't just show up on Sundays, but we do life together. You can't do life with everyone, but you can do life with someone from this community, and you can be a friend. I've been in ministry now for 15 years. And man, there's all sorts of people coming, people going. I think since the day I've been in this thing, there's always someone who's saying something. There's always been opposition. There's always been a critic. There's always been someone who's challenging. There's always been someone I'm disappointing. By the way, I'm not always the victim. Sometimes I got it wrong. I'm just saying, in all of that relationship exchange, you can get tired and you can get fatigued and you can say, I don't want to be a friend anymore. But I think for Don Shree and I, a long time ago, we said, I'm called to it. I'm called and committed to being a friend. Regardless of the outcome, regardless of the result, I'm going to keep reminding myself of what I am called to and what I'm committing to. And if I'm in God's house, I am going to be a friend. Now, I was talking to our team the other day, and I was saying, there's people that have come and gone, people that we love, and it's a different church. It's a beautiful church. But how silly would it be if someone were to leave your life and you go, you know what, I'm going to quit trusting other people now. I'm going to regret all that investment. That's silly, crew leader. Some of you stopped being a crew leader because you had some people that were coming and then they stopped coming, and now you think that you're a failure. No, welcome to ministry. Some of you are like, we're leading, financial peace. You're like, the first season you did was awesome. The second season is like, man, now I have to recruit people. Like, whoa, like I'm not called to this. That struggle's way too big. No. That's the indication that you're stepping into what you're called and committed to. You're called and committed to being a friend, to being a person who believes and loves and stewards people. And my little boy Wyatt right now is playing soccer and he's getting ready to play t-ball. Now, I don't want to speak death over my son, but let's just put it this way. I don't think he's going to be a professional at both. Maybe one. But that doesn't stop me from going to practice and losing my ever-loving mind. You ought to see, I'm getting kicked out of Little League soccer games, You got to worry about me making a bad witness for our church, Like, let's go, Wyatt. Come on, bro. Come on. Even though he's probably not going to go pro. Why would you do that, Rich? Because the moment of itself is beautiful. Something tells me I'm going to look back on my life after he's out of my house, after he's not eating at my table, even though he's not pro, and go, you know what? That wasn't a waste. Fathering him and investing into him and leaning into the moment. And friend, it's not a waste to be a friend. It's not a waste. It's not a waste to forgive. It's not a waste to try again. It's not a waste to show back up. It's not a waste to get back on the team and say, that person hurt me, but I'm going to give that guy another chance. I'm going to keep being a friend. I want friends. I got to be a friend. Lastly tonight, I'm called and I'm committed to being a worshiper. Called and committed to being a disciple. I'm called and committed to being a steward. I'm called and committed to being a friend. And I'm called and committed to being a worshiper. It so happens that I get this microphone and get to pastor this church, but those are things I'm called to. I'm called. This thing's over tomorrow. I'm called and committed to being a disciple, being a steward, being a friend, being a worshiper. Here's what I know about worship. Worship brings God's presence. We're going to take a moment and we're going to worship, and you watch as God's presence comes, his power comes with it. And what you need is you need strength for the struggle. And the only way you'll have strength for the struggle is if you have God's presence on your life. You do understand that God is omnipresent, meaning he's everywhere all the time. When you leave tonight and you go back to wherever it is you're going, he is with you. The problem is many times we're unaware. But what does worship do? Worship simply brings an awareness to the beauty and the majesty of an all-powerful, omnipotent, omniscient God who has never left me, who has never forsaken me, who brings power and strength to my struggle. What I learn is that when I get in his presence, he reveals his purpose. I like to spend my mornings putting worship music on, opening my Bible, because I got so many struggles. I don't fight against flesh and blood. I fight in the spirit. I fight on my knees. And when his presence shows up, it was already there, but now I'm aware of it. Wow, I get strength for the struggle. And I discover, wow, the struggle has its purpose. I was gone on break, and whenever I'm gone, I'm always just asking, God, give me a word for our team. Give me a word for our team. Give me a word for our team. And I'm sad to say, but sometimes I go, God, give me a sign. You ever pray that prayer? I need a sign. Is it Texas or California? Oh, CA, California. Okay, like, God, I need a sign. God, I need a sign. I need a sign. God, I need a sign. God, I need a sign. God, I need a sign, God. God, I want to bring a word to our staff. When I see them after 4 weeks, I want to speak life into them going into the next 7 years. Like, I want to be a good leader, bold leader. God, give me a sign. Give me a sign. Give me a sign. Give me a sign. I was at this house in Alabama, and I'm praying that prayer every day. And in the mornings, I would study a little bit, and then I'd go on the boat for a little bit, and then in the afternoons, I would, Netflix and chill with Don Cherie. And and so I'm laying on this couch. This is a true story. And I'm laying on this couch. I'm like, God, give me a sign, give me a sign. And I'd been there for days, but I'm praying this prayer. And as I'm praying this prayer, I look up, and look, this is what I want you to see. I want you to see this photo. This is the sign above me. I'm like, God, give me a sign, give me a sign. And there's this flag that's literally hanging there in this house. I'm like, what in the world? But I don't think much of it. But the next day, I started watching, there's this show, Terminalist, and in the background of this show I see the same, I'm watching the show from that couch, Don't Give Up the Ship, and then I look back at the terminal list, and in the background at the restaurant on the wall is this flag. It says, Don't Give Up the Ship. I'm like, that's weird. Well, the next day I go to the lake, and I'm at this restaurant at the lake, and I'm hanging out, and we're just talking, and I look over, and on the wall of the restaurant at the lake is, Don't Give Up the Ship. I'm like, that's weird. And then a couple days later, I'm laying there, right there, looking at that flag, and I don't know how it works, and so I just indulge me. I think it's spiritual. Apple does this thing where it's like a time hop, or like it gives you photos of like, like that day. 5 or 6 years ago, I have a screenshot in my phone of an email that my friend Pastor Levi Lusko sent me, and here's the email. Look at this. There it is. September 28th, 2016, and I'm like, God, I need a sign. So it gets better. I leave the lake. I go to Chicago. I skip church. And first time in my life. And I fly to Montana. And I go to see my friend Levi. And I walk into his office. And this is what I see when I walk into his office. I go, okay, God, I think you're giving me a sign. This is true. This is just so how sometimes I called our team because we're getting ready for Staff Retreat. I said, I want to give mugs away to everyone at Staff Retreat with the slogan, Don't Give Up the Ship. But I was like, I don't know. Like, I got a sign, but I don't know what it means. So I discovered that in the War of 1812, I think it's Captain James Lawrence, his ship is attacked and he is badly wounded and he's brought down below. And his dying words to his crew is, don't give up the ship. And this little phrase began to travel. And now today it's like the motto of the Navy. Navy SEALs have it all over their place. And it's just a call to not quit, to not give up. And so I started reading. I'm like, don't give up the ship. Don't give up the ship. Yeah. That's what I want to tell the staff. Don't give up the ship. Don't give up the ship. Hey, guys, don't give up the ship. Guys, I could see myself. Don't give up the ship. I could see myself in front of you tonight. Don't give up the ship. And I was going to walk down in front of married couples and say, don't give up the ship. And I was going to go to your kids and say, don't give up the ship. But I still didn't really know. It's like people that just amen at moments, like, amen! But I was like, don't give up. Don't give up the ship. Don't give up the ship. Wait. Don't give up the struggle. Wait, I know what the Lord's saying to our church. Don't give up the ship. Don't give up the struggle. Don't give up the struggle. Don't give up the struggle has. Oh, I was like, I think the Lord's saying, don't give the ship. Don't give up the ship. Don't give up the struggle has its. What would He want our church to hear as we're stepping into this next season? What would He want every person who's questioning their calling to hear? Oh, don't give up. The struggle has its purpose. Oh, don't give up the ship. Don't give up. The struggle has its purpose. Look at your neighbor. Say, neighbor, don't give up. The struggle has its purpose. Don't give up. The struggle has its purpose. Friends, don't give up the discipleship. Don't give up the stewardship. Don't give up the friendship. Don't give up the worship. It has its purpose. We're moving forward if we don't back down. If you got some fight in you tonight, lift your hands, lift your voice, prophesy with your worship. Come on and sing it out.